The sun of Valira glimmered across the sky like liquid gold, spilling over the city of Sereth, where spires of polished crystal floated above the ground. Lyra Skyren walked briskly along the marble terraces, her long robes fluttering in the warm breeze. Today was the day her family had long awaited, the day of her arranged engagement. But Lyra's heart beat with defiance, not excitement. For generations, the Skyren family had married their daughters into other noble houses to strengthen alliances and ensure the stability of Valira's government. Lyra had seen it happen to her older cousins. They had bowed to their family's wishes, their smiles polite but empty. She refused to follow that path. "I cannot do this," she had whispered to her mirror earlier that morning. Her reflection seemed to nod in agreement. Lyra's large violet eyes burned with determination. She would not marry someone chosen for her by tradition. She wanted her own life, her own choices, and her own adventures. The Skyren family hall was decorated with floating lanterns and shimmering tapestries that depicted centuries of her ancestors. Guests from all over the planet had gathered, their robes gleaming under the sunlight. Lyra's parents, dignified and proud, waited at the center of the hall. Her mother's eyes sparkled with both worry and hope, while her father's jaw was tight with anticipation. As Lyra stepped forward, the elder of the council spoke, his voice deep and commanding. "Lyra Skyren, it is time to accept the union arranged by your family. This is your duty, and your yes will honor your house." Lyra's hands tightened at her sides. The words felt like chains, each one heavier than the last. She opened her mouth to reply, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. I cannot agree," she said. Silence fell over the hall. Gasps echoed from the audience. The council elders' faces darkened, and her mother's hand flew to her mouth. "You cannot refuse," her father said, his voice low but sharp. "This is not a matter of choice. It is your duty." "I understand my duty," Lyra said, her voice firm. "But my life is mine to live. I will not marry someone just because tradition demands it." The elders murmured among themselves, their disappointment palpable. Some whispered about the scandal this could cause, others about the political fallout. Lyra knew she had risked everything, but she did not regret a single word. The ceremony ended abruptly, with her parents retreating to confer with the council. Lyra, feeling the weight of the room's eyes on her, slipped away quietly. She did not need witnesses to see her resolve. She walked through the floating gardens that hung above the city, a maze of crystal bridges, glowing plants, and streams that defied gravity. The gardens were her sanctuary, a place where she could think freely, away from rules and expectations. As she wandered, she noticed unusual activity near the outer docking bay. Ships she had never seen before glided into the air, their shapes unlike any Valiran vessels. Humans. Lyra had read about them in books, learned about their curious and inventive ways, but she had never seen one in person. They moved differently, spoke differently, and yet there was something about them that drew her attention. Among the humans, one stood out. He was tall and lean, with warm brown eyes and a calm presence that seemed to command neither fear nor respect but quiet attention. His movements were simple and confident, and he smiled at the bustling crew with ease. Lyra's breath caught. Curiosity tugged her forward. She had always been fascinated by other species, their customs, their thinking, and their technologies. She wondered what it would be like to learn from them, to experience their world firsthand. Before she knew it, she had stepped closer to the humans, trying to see the man more clearly. Their eyes met briefly, and something unexpected happened. Lyra felt a jolt through her chest, a strange warmth that made her cheeks flush. She had never felt this way before, and it startled her. One of the humans, noticing her presence, approached with a gentle bow. "Greetings," he said. His voice was calm and melodic, with a softness that seemed sincere rather than formal. "I am Elias. Are you from Valira?" Lyra's tongue seemed to freeze. She wanted to speak, but all she could do was nod. The human smiled again, small and reassuring, as if he understood her silence. "You seem different," Elias said, his eyes curious, but kind. I have not met anyone like you before. Lyra's heart raced. Her instinct was to turn and leave, to avoid being drawn into something she did not understand. Yet, she could not. There was something about him, something unexplainable, that made her want to stay. A voice called from behind her, a council attendant, reminding her that she had responsibilities, that she could not linger. Lyra's stomach twisted with frustration. She had no intention of returning to the ceremony, but she also did not want to offend this human, whose gaze seemed so open, so honest. Without thinking, she blurted out, "Yes," in response to his silent invitation to join him on the ship. The words slipped from her lips before her mind could catch up. She froze, realizing instantly what she had done. Elias blinked, surprised, but not upset. "Then come with me," he said simply. Offering his hand, Lyra hesitated. Her mind raced with doubts. This decision could change her life completely. She was breaking every rule she had known, defying her family, and stepping into the unknown. Yet, a small part of her, the part that had always yearned for freedom, whispered that this was the moment she had been waiting for. Taking a deep breath, she placed her hand in his. The warmth of his skin, the steadiness of his grip, gave her courage. She let herself be led toward the ship, leaving behind the floating gardens, the city, and everything she had ever known. As they boarded, she felt a mix of fear and excitement. The ship's interior was unlike anything she had imagined. Sleek metal walls, lights that pulsed softly, and technology that hummed with energy. Humans moved with ease, working together, their cooperation effortless yet precise. Lyra realized that she had stepped into a world entirely different from her own. Elias guided her to a viewing deck, where she could see the city of Sareth shrinking below them. Her heart ached slightly, missing the place she had called home. Yet the thrill of adventure filled her with a sense of possibility she had never known. "Are you scared?" Elias asked quietly, his eyes meeting hers. Lyra nodded, though a small smile tugged at her lips. "A little. But I think I want this. I want to see what's out there. Beyond everything I've known." Elias smiled warmly. "Good. Curiosity is the first step to understanding, and understanding changes everything." The ship lifted higher, leaving Valira behind. Lyra watched the horizon, the floating gardens, and the distant spires disappear into the blue sky. She felt a flutter of hope. Perhaps this impulsive yes was not a mistake. Perhaps it was the beginning of something extraordinary. As the stars began to appear, tiny points of light in the endless sky, Lyra felt her heart open to the unknown. The future was uncertain, full of challenges and surprises. But for the first time, she felt truly alive. Somewhere deep inside, she knew that this journey would not only teach her about humans, but also about herself. The adventure had begun, and there was no turning back. And as the human girl and alien girl crossed the threshold of the unknown together, neither fully understanding the other, a single thought echoed in Lyra's mind. Maybe freedom was not just about refusing to obey, it was about choosing to embrace the unexpected. The human ship, Odyssey, hummed softly as it glided through the upper atmosphere of Valira. Lyra Skyren leaned against the railing of the viewing deck, her violet eyes wide with wonder. The world below, her home city of Sareth, looked small and fragile, a jewel of glass and light floating among the clouds. Yet she felt no sadness. The excitement of the unknown burned in her chest. Elias, the human who had unwittingly drawn her into this adventure, stood beside her. His brown eyes scanned the stars, calm and steady. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he said. "It is," Lyra replied, though her voice was soft. She didn't know if she was speaking about Valira or the stars themselves. For the first time in her life, she felt free, yet that freedom was tinged with nervousness. She had agreed to this journey on impulse, and now reality was beginning to sink in. "Are you afraid?" Elias asked gently, sensing her thoughts. Lyra hesitated. "A little. I have never been on a ship like this. Never traveled beyond my world. I I don't know what to expect. Elias smiled. That's normal. Humans often feel fear when they step into the unknown. But fear can also be a guide, if you let it teach you. Lyra studied him closely. There was a sincerity in his expression, a warmth that made her heart flutter. She realized she had never met anyone like him before, someone who treated her as an equal, not a curiosity or a princess to be admired from afar. The ship's interior was a marvel. Smooth metallic walls shimmered under soft lighting, and panels of glowing symbols blinked in sequences Lyra did not understand. Crew members moved efficiently, communicating in a language she could barely comprehend. But despite the unfamiliarity, she felt welcomed. The humans were polite and patient, answering her questions without condescension. Elias guided her through the corridors, showing her the living quarters, the control room, and the observation deck. Lyra marveled at everything. The simplicity and elegance of the human designs, their ability to make technology feel alive rather than oppressive. Do you always build your ships like this? She asked, stepping carefully over a glowing floor panel. Elias chuckled. We try to make them functional, safe, and comfortable. You'll find that humans value practicality, but we also like things that feel natural. Nothing should feel too cold or mechanical. Lyra nodded, impressed. There was a certain charm in their approach, a balance between science and artistry that she had not expected. She had always thought humans were primitive compared to Velirans, but she was quickly realizing that was far from the truth. As the ship left Valira's atmosphere, Lyra felt a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. The stars stretched endlessly before her, a vast canvas of possibilities. She had read about space travel in books, but the reality was overwhelming. The universe was bigger than she had ever imagined, and humans were brave enough to explore it. During the first day of travel, Lyra struggled to adjust to the ship's environment. Meals were different. Gravity felt slightly off, and the casual camaraderie of the crew puzzled her. On Valira, formality and hierarchy dictated every interaction. Here, humans laughed freely, spoke openly, and treated each other as partners rather than subordinates. Elias noticed her discomfort. It's okay to take your time, he said. You don't have to understand everything at once. Humans are different, but that doesn't make us wrong. Just try to observe, to see why we do things the way we do. Lyra tried. She watched as the crew worked together to navigate the ship, repaired equipment with improvised tools, and solved problems quickly, using clever thinking rather than relying solely on advanced technology. She began to understand that humans thrived not because they had superior tools, but because they adapted, cooperated, and never gave up. A few days into the journey, the ship encountered a strange spatial anomaly, a swirling field of energy that pulsed unpredictably. Sensors went wild, alarms rang, and the crew scrambled to stabilize the ship. Lyra's heart raced. What is happening? She asked, gripping the railing. Elias moved beside her. It's a natural phenomenon. Rare, but not dangerous if handled correctly. We'll need all hands on deck. Despite her fear, Lyra felt a spark of determination. She remembered the studies she had done on energy fields back home and realized she might be able to help. Stepping into the control room, she saw panels displaying streams of data that twisted and pulsed in mesmerizing patterns. Elias, she said, pointing at a sequence of readings. If you adjust the energy dampeners to align with these frequencies, it should stabilize the anomaly. Elias studied the display, then looked at her in surprise. You're correct, he said. I didn't think of that. Can you guide me through it? Lyra nodded, her fingers flying over the controls. The crew watched in astonishment as she worked, her mind sharp and focused. She had never been on a human ship, yet her knowledge of alien physics allowed her to contribute in a way that even humans could not have predicted. After tense minutes, the anomaly stabilized, and the ship returned to its normal course. The crew erupted in applause, and Elias gave her a proud smile. You just saved the ship, he said. Lyra felt a mixture of relief and pride. For the first time, she realized that she was not helpless or naive. Her skills, combined with humans' courage and resourcefulness, made a powerful combination. That night, she stood alone on the observation deck, watching the stars streak past as the ship cruised at faster-than-light speed. She thought about her family back on Valira, their anger, their disappointment, and wondered how they would react if they knew what she had done. But the fear of disapproval no longer mattered. What mattered was the thrill of discovery, the joy of learning, and the unexpected connection she felt with humans, especially Elias. There was something about his calm confidence and curiosity that inspired her. Something that made her want to explore not just the galaxy, but herself. In the days that followed, Lyra began to adapt to life aboard the Odyssey. She learned to operate the basic controls of the ship, communicate with the crew, and even joke in a way that made humans laugh. Each day brought new lessons, from understanding human navigation methods to experimenting with their food and technology. She also began to see the small but remarkable traits that defined humans. They helped one another without hesitation, solved problems creatively, and treated challenges as opportunities rather than threats. Lyra could see why they had become capable explorers despite their smaller size and weaker physical abilities compared to many alien species. Elias remained a constant presence, guiding her gently and answering her endless questions. Sometimes they worked together on calculations, other times they simply sat and watched the stars, sharing quiet thoughts about the universe. Slowly, Lyra's initial fear transformed into admiration, respect, and a budding sense of friendship, or perhaps something more. One evening, as the ship passed near a glowing nebula, Lyra spoke softly. "Elias, I never thought I would feel so at home, away from home. But with you and this crew, it feels right." Elias smiled, his eyes reflecting the swirling colors of the nebula. "Home is not just a place," he said. "It's the people, the experiences, the connections you make." "I think you're beginning to understand that," Lyra nodded, a small smile touching her lips. She still remembered the moment she had said yes, impulsively. The decision that had led her here. At first, she had feared it was a mistake, a foolish choice that would ruin her life. But now, she realized it had been the first step toward discovering herself and the courage of humanity. The stars stretched endlessly before her, a reminder that the universe was vast, mysterious, and full of possibilities. For the first time, Lyra felt that she was not running from her family's expectations. She was running toward something greater: knowledge, friendship, adventure, and perhaps even love. As the Odyssey sailed through the cosmos, Lyra stood at the observation deck and whispered to herself, "I am ready. I want to see it all, to learn it all, to understand humans." And in that moment, high above the world she had known, she knew her journey had truly begun. The Odyssey sailed smoothly through deep space, leaving behind the swirling lights of distant nebulae and traveling toward a habitable exoplanet that served as a neutral ground for interspecies diplomacy. Lyra Skyren leaned against the railing of the observation deck, her violet eyes tracing the patterns of the stars. Each day on the ship brought new lessons about humans, about herself, and about the universe that stretched infinitely before her. Elias joined her, holding a cup of warm, fragrant liquid that the humans called tea. He offered it to her with a gentle smile. "You've been quiet," he said. "Thinking?" "Yes," Lyra replied, taking the cup. She felt its warmth seep into her fingers and then into her chest, calming her. "I'm thinking about everything I've seen so far. Humans are different, not just physically or in your ways, but in your spirit. You face challenges without fear, without giving up. You adapt. You cooperate." "You cooperate," Elias nodded. "We have to. The universe doesn't wait for anyone. If you want to survive, you learn to work together. And sometimes, you learn to trust each other, even when you don't fully understand." Lyra considered his words. She had always lived in a world governed by rules and hierarchy, where trust was often limited to one's family or allies. Humans, she realized, trusted more freely, and that trust created strength. She had begun to see why Elias and his crew were capable of navigating space with confidence and courage. When the Odyssey arrived at the exoplanet, the crew marveled at its beauty. Lush green forests stretched across continents. Rivers sparkled like silver ribbons, and mountains reached into the clouds. It was a world of balance, a place where multiple species could meet without fear of dominance or hostility. Lyra stepped off the ship, her boots sinking slightly into soft grass. She inhaled the fresh, clean air, so different from the filtered atmosphere aboard the Odyssey. Humans and aliens from other worlds had already gathered at the council grounds, speaking in a mixture of languages, gestures, and signs. The atmosphere was alive with curiosity, diplomacy, and careful observation. Elias walked beside her, explaining the customs and expectations. You'll notice that here, no one tries to impress anyone with status. Actions speak louder than titles. If you show competence, respect, or kindness, people take notice. Lyra nodded, her eyes wide with interest. She watched humans engage with aliens. Some taller, some smaller, some with wings or extra limbs. They smiled, laughed, and shared ideas freely. There was no fear, no hesitation, only communication and understanding. As the council convened, a crisis arose unexpectedly. A sudden environmental hazard, a localized magnetic storm threatened the meeting area. Alien delegates began to panic, unsure how to protect their delicate devices or their own safety. Lyra felt a surge of fear at first, but then remembered what she had learned aboard the Odyssey. She stepped forward. Elias, she said, pointing to the storm readings. If we redirect the energy shields to counteract the magnetic flow and synchronize with the planet's natural field, it should stabilize the area. Elias looked at her with surprise, then nodded. Do it. Lyra worked quickly, her knowledge of Valyran energy systems allowing her to bridge the gap between alien technology and human methods. The shields pulsed and hummed as she adjusted them, and slowly, the magnetic storm weakened, the council grounds stabilizing. Delegates cheered quietly, impressed by the display of competence. Elias gave her a proud look. You've done remarkably well. Not just for a visitor, but for anyone. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest. A mixture of pride and relief. For the first time, she realized that she could contribute meaningfully, that her ideas mattered. She had feared being helpless in the human world, but now she understood that strength came in many forms, not just physical, but intellectual and emotional as well. After the storm passed, Lyra and Elias walked through the council grounds together. Aliens and humans mingled freely, exchanging knowledge, discussing science, and sharing ideas about exploration and collaboration. Lyra listened intently, asking questions, taking notes, and learning from everyone she could. She realized how small her world had been on Valyra, limited by traditions and fear of breaking rules. Here, the universe felt limitless. As the days passed, Lyra also began to notice small, personal details about humans, how they expressed care, humor, and empathy. One evening, she watched as Elias helped a nervous young alien adjust its communication device, patiently guiding its hands and encouraging it with kind words. She saw humans sharing meals, stories, and laughter, sometimes over simple jokes that made no sense to anyone else, yet brought them closer together. Lyra's admiration grew. She began to see humanity not as fragile beings, as some Valyrans might assume, but as resilient, creative, and endlessly curious. They faced challenges that she would have shied away from, yet they approached them with courage and optimism. It was a kind of bravery she had never encountered in her strict, ordered world. During a quiet moment on the observation deck, Lyra asked Elias, "Do humans ever doubt themselves?" "Of course," he replied honestly. "We doubt. We fail. We make mistakes. But we also try again, and we help each other along the way. That's what makes us strong. We don't give up just because something is hard." Lyra thought of her own world, where failure was often met with shame and obedience was demanded above all else. She realized how much she had been confined by fear, and how much she had already grown since saying yes on that day aboard the ship. As the council sessions continued, Lyra was invited to share her knowledge. She presented ideas that combined Valyran technology with human ingenuity, proposing ways to improve energy distribution and communication networks. Delegates from multiple species listened intently, asking questions and showing genuine interest. Lyra felt a surge of confidence. She had never imagined that her voice could carry this far, that her ideas could inspire others. One evening, Elias and Lyra walked along the edge of a crystalline lake, its surface glowing with bioluminescent plants. The water shimmered in shades of blue and green, reflecting the stars above. Lyra paused, captivated by the beauty, and whispered, "I never imagined the universe could be so alive." Elias smiled, standing close. "It's even more alive when you share it with others. You see not just the beauty, but the connections, the trust, the curiosity, the willingness to learn. That's what makes exploration meaningful." Lyra felt her heart warm. She realized that her impulsive yes had led her not just to adventure, but to understanding. She was learning to see the universe through different eyes, to appreciate courage and kindness in ways she had never before understood. That night, as she lay in the small cabin provided for her, Lyra reflected on how much she had grown. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and challenges, yet she had found strength she did not know she possessed. She had learned to trust humans, to rely on her own abilities, and to embrace the unknown. And perhaps most importantly, she had begun to understand the subtle bond forming between herself and Elias, a connection built on respect, shared experiences, and quiet understanding. It was not love yet, she thought, but it was the beginning of something that might grow into something extraordinary. The next day brought new adventures. Lyra joined the humans on expeditions across the exoplanet, observing alien species, testing new technologies, and solving unexpected problems. She learned the importance of teamwork, improvisation, and empathy. Every challenge she faced reinforced the lesson that humans, though physically weaker than many alien species, possessed a spirit of resilience and creativity that was unmatched. By the time the Odyssey was ready to depart, Lyra felt transformed. She had arrived as a curious, hesitant girl, unsure of her place in the universe. Now, she was confident, capable, and inspired. She understood that her journey was not just about learning about humans or seeing new worlds, it was about discovering herself, her courage, and her potential. As she stood beside Elias on the observation deck once more, watching the exoplanet fade into the distance, Lyra whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning. I want to learn everything, see everything, and be everything I can be." Elias glanced at her and smiled knowingly. "And you will," he said. "As long as you keep your curiosity alive, there are no limits." Lyra nodded, a small but determined smile spreading across her face. The universe stretched endlessly before them, full of wonders, challenges, and opportunities. She had begun to understand humans, yes, but more importantly, she had begun to understand herself. The adventure was far from over, but for the first time, Lyra felt ready for whatever the stars had in store. The Odyssey cruised silently through the black velvet of space, the stars glittering like diamonds scattered across a vast, endless sky. Lyra Skyren stood on the observation deck, her violet eyes tracing the streaks of light as the ship moved at faster-than-light speed. She thought about everything that had happened since that fateful day on Valyra, the day she had whispered yes without thinking. Back then, she had felt fear and uncertainty. Yet here she was, thousands of kilometers from home, stronger, wiser, and more confident than she had ever imagined. Her journey had been filled with challenges, surprises, and lessons that had reshaped her understanding of the universe and of herself. Elias joined her on the deck, offering a warm smile. "You've changed," he said softly, as if reading her thoughts. Lyra smiled in return. "I think so," she replied. "I've seen humans face danger, solve problems, and work together in ways I never thought possible. I've learned so much, and not just about you or your crew. I've learned about me." Elias nodded, his brown eyes reflecting the starlight. "The universe has a way of teaching us. If we're willing to listen. You've done more than just learn. You've grown." As the ship approached the neutral planet they had visited before, Lyra felt a mixture of anticipation and nostalgia. The world had been their testing ground, a place where she had first applied her knowledge in collaboration with humans, gained confidence in her abilities, and observed the courage and creativity that defined them. The Council of Species awaited their return for the final diplomatic sessions. Lyra had been invited to participate not just as a guest, but as a contributor. Her ideas had impressed many, blending Valyran precision with human ingenuity, and the other species had begun to see humans as more than just a physically weaker race. They were valuable, capable partners in interstellar exploration. The council hall was alive with activity when Lyra and Elias arrived. Delegates from countless worlds mingled, discussing treaties, sharing innovations, and exchanging knowledge. Lyra felt a quiet pride. This was a moment she could have never imagined when she had refused her arranged marriage on Valyra. Yet here she was, part of something greater than herself. Part of a universe-wide conversation that mattered. A sudden technical issue arose. The communication array, which linked the council delegates across the planet, began to malfunction due to a minor energy surge. Panic rippled among some of the aliens unfamiliar with the technology. Lyra stepped forward calmly, her hands moving confidently across the interface. Drawing upon everything she had learned from Valyrans and humans alike, she adjusted the power flows, recalibrated the system, and restored full function. A wave of applause spread through the hall, and Elias gave her a proud look. "You've become indispensable," he whispered. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest. She had come to realize that her impulsive yes was not a mistake. It had been the first step toward discovering her true potential. She had learned that strength was not just about obeying rules or following tradition. It was about courage, creativity, and the willingness to take risks. Later, as the council adjourned for the evening, Lyra and Elias walked through the gardens surrounding the meeting area. Bioluminescent plants glowed softly, illuminating paths lined with crystal fountains. Delegates from various species mingled, sharing stories and laughing. Lyra felt at peace, a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. "You've adapted well," Elias said, his eyes warm and attentive. "Most visitors would have been overwhelmed, but you've not only survived, you've thrived." "I've had good teachers," Lyra replied, glancing at him. "You and your crew. You've shown me what it means to face challenges without fear, to value cooperation and kindness. I've learned more in these weeks than I ever did in years back home." Elias smiled. "And you've taught us something too. Humans often think we are clever, but sometimes we forget that wisdom can come from anywhere, from anyone willing to share it." Lyra felt a quiet joy at his words. The bond between them had grown steadily, built not on obligation, but on mutual respect, shared experiences, and the subtle understanding that came from seeing the universe together. She realized that her feelings for Elias had deepened into something that might one day be called love, not impulsive or naive, but steady and genuine. The next morning, the council convened for the final session, where important decisions about interstellar cooperation were to be made. Lyra stood alongside Elias, representing the unity between humans and Valyrans. Her presence was a symbol of choice, courage, and the bridges that could be built between species through understanding and collaboration. The council discussions were intense, but productive. Lyra offered solutions to complex problems, suggested strategies for shared research, and provided insights that combined human creativity with Valyran logic. Delegates listened attentively, nodding in agreement, clearly impressed by her contributions. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment. After the session ended, Elias and Lyra found a quiet spot overlooking the city. The twin suns of the planet were setting, casting warm gold and pink light across the landscape. Lyra felt a serenity she had never known, a sense that she was exactly where she was meant to be. "I never imagined I would feel so at peace," Lyra said softly. "I came here reluctantly, unsure of myself, And now, I feel capable, confident, and hopeful. Elias placed a hand gently on hers. You've grown into this moment, Lyra. It's not the place or the circumstances, it's you. You've chosen to embrace the unknown, to learn, to trust, and to contribute. That's what makes you extraordinary. For a long moment, Lyra simply looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude and admiration. She realized that her journey had taught her more than just facts about humans or interstellar diplomacy. It had taught her about courage, the importance of choice, and the power of connection. As the suns dipped below the horizon, Lyra made a silent promise to herself. She would continue to explore, to learn, and to grow. She would not be bound by fear or tradition. She would choose her path with care and courage, embracing the unknown with an open heart. Elias squeezed her hand gently. "Where will we go next?" he asked. His voice filled with quiet excitement. Lyra smiled. "Wherever the stars take us," she replied. "I want to see new worlds, meet new species, and discover more about humanity, and about myself." Elias chuckled. "That sounds like a perfect plan." As night fell, the Odyssey prepared to depart. Lyra stood on the deck, gazing at the star-filled sky, feeling a sense of freedom she had never known. She had refused a life dictated by others, and had discovered something far greater. The joy of choice, the thrill of adventure, and the incredible courage and potential of humans. Her thoughts drifted to her family on Valira. She wondered what they would think if they saw her now not as a defiant daughter, but as a confident, capable, and independent individual. She knew they would be surprised, perhaps even proud, though it would take time for them to understand the changes in her. Elias joined her, and together they watched as the stars streaked past, the universe unfolding in endless possibility. Lyra felt a quiet certainty that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, filled with mysteries, challenges, and beauty, and she was ready to face it all, not as a reluctant participant, but as an explorer, a learner, and a friend to humanity. In that moment, Lyra understood something profound. Life was not about following the rules set by others, or avoiding mistakes. It was about embracing opportunities, learning from experiences, and connecting with others in meaningful ways. And in doing so, she had discovered the true spirit of humanity: resilient, compassionate, innovative, and endlessly curious. Elias turned to her and smiled, his eyes reflecting the brilliance of the stars. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Lyra returned his smile, feeling a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with fear or obligation. "Together," she agreed. And as the Odyssey sailed into the endless night, carrying humans, aliens, and dreams of discovery, Lyra knew that she had found her place not in the rules of tradition, nor in the expectations of others, but in the boundless universe. Guided by courage, curiosity, and the extraordinary potential of the human spirit. For Lyra, the girl who had once refused to marry, had found freedom, friendship, purpose, and the beginning of something far greater than she had ever imagined. The stars stretched before her like a promise, infinite and shining, and she was ready to meet them all.